learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the significance of physical evidence and their scope. Second, the type of information which can be revealed by these physical evidences. Introduction. Forensic sciences being an important factor of the criminal justice system, plays a vital role in providing a scientific information through the analysis of physical evidences to the investigator. The evidence which are present at the scene are also called physical evidence, analysis of which in linking the criminal victim with each other and with the scene of crime. It is mainly concerned with the identification of traces of evidence left at the scene, their scientific analysis in the laboratory, and finally the reconstruction of the event. During an investigation, forensic evidences are recognized, collected from a crime scene, and analyzed scientifically in the laboratory according to the requirement of investigating officer. After that, a report is submitted to the court of law. As each crime scene is unique and each has case present its own challenges, complex cases may require the collection, examination of a large number of varied evidence. These kinds of consideration needs to kept in mind while evaluating the value of associative physical evidence for comparison purpose. In this module, a specific kind of physical evidences has been introduced and the type of information they reveal has been discussed in detail. Different methods and approaches have been applied to identify these evidences.
The physical evidence. This is evidence that does not forget. It is not confused by the excitement of the moment. It is not absent because human witnesses are. It is factual evidence. Physical evidence cannot be wrong. It cannot prejudice itself. Only its interpretation can err. It was written by Paul L. Kirk in 1974. Now, criminal investigation. Scientifically means to recognize the evidences at the scene of crime which can be analyzed scientifically in the forensic science laboratory and help answering the questions posed by the investigating officers and help to identify the suspected person who has committed the crime. To achieve this aim, the investigation needs to be conducted at the following two places. First is the crime scene and the second is the laboratory. Both the places are very important, but crime scene investigation is more important than the laboratory investigation in this sense. If at first instance the evidences are properly recognized, collected and packaged properly, only the laboratory results will be useful in the identification of the suspect. Now, the crime scene investigation. The success or failure of the application of forensic science in processing a criminal case mainly depends upon the crime scene investigation only if the physical evidences to be collected from the crime scene have been searched and recognized properly. Next is the exact position location of the evidences collected from the crime scene has been recorded. Now, the next point is the proper procedure has been adopted to collect and pack evidentiary materials at the crime scene. Now, the next point, proper control samples for appropriate locations for analysis and interpretation purposes have been collected. Now, the next point, sufficient quantity of sample has been collected which are required for scientific analysis. Now, the next point, the samples are collected without contamination. Next, the evidence can be helpful in linking the crime with the criminal on the basis of the results produced by the laboratory. Beside these, another important point which have to be kept in mind while sending samples to the laboratory is to attach a list of queries along with each and every sample sent for analysis to the laboratory, so that only required analysis of each and every clue materials have been conducted and desirable results helps in the identification of the suspects. Now be careful, this crime scene and all the evidence left at the scene are affected by the external conditions like sunlight or other factors such as rain, wind or snow may all alter the crime scene with the passage of time and destroy evidence. The moment objects are considered as physical evidences, it becomes a mute witness to the crime. Investigators must move quickly to identify and protect evidence before environmental effects being to alter its appearance and composition. Now, the laboratory investigation. The samples are received in the laboratory for analysis, and success of the analysis made in the laboratory depends upon whether the proper sample have been sent properly packed to the crime scene. Next, whether the list of queries has been attached with every sample to be analyzed in the lab. Next point is whether the materials are identified and compared with the help of prior standardized scientific materials and techniques. Next, whether the results obtained from the analysis are interpreted properly to produce an elaborate and to the point report. Next, and finally, whether the report prepared to be presented in the court of law have simple language understandable to the members of jury, less use of technical jargon and photographs and other means of authenticate the results obtained, so that even a layman can understand and appreciate the results produced from the analysis of evidentiary clue materials. Scientific analysis of the clue materials help in establishing the presence or absence of a link between the crime, the criminal, the victim and the place and the time of occurrence. Now, the crime investigation and evidentiary clue materials. Crime scene investigation is a process that aims at recording the crime scene at it is first encountered and collected all scientific, potentially relevant physical evidences to provide situation in a particular case. The evidentiary clue materials are received in the laboratory might be very diverse in nature, but the methods used to analyze them sometimes can have a great deal in common or sometimes may even be identical. Similarly, various types of patterns are also analyzed and interpreted primarily to provide assistance to reconstruct the crime, although the patterns may have been produced by quite different events involving quite dissimilar materials. Complex cases sometimes may require the collection, examination and analysis of large amount of evidences. These cases may involve multiple forensic experts having different backgrounds, commonly in biology, chemistry, physics, computer and other disciplines. These forensic scientists work independently to analyze the evidence in a particular case. For example, one forensic examiner might analyze latent print evidence, another compare glass pieces, and third might be examining hair or carpet fibers using a microscope which was collected from the scene. The investigators will then combine all of the examiner's objective results to build a case report. Now, the scope of a forensic investigation. The range of a forensic include either one or all the three following major activities in the analyzing and interpreting the physical evidence in the forensic science laboratory. First is the identification, second individualization, third reconstruction. Now, the identification. The process of identification, which is based on a class characteristic, is common to all the basic sciences and in fact to all the items in everyday life. This system can also be used to classify the physical evidence in which items having similar class characteristics are assigned to particular categories. The best example can be fiber, glass, hair or soil sample, in which the class characteristic help in determining whether these samples are consistent with similar material recovered from a crime scene. Although fibers do not have any individualizing characteristics such as DNA. It does have class characteristics such as color, length, material and shape of the cross section, etc. Comparison of class characteristic of fiber evidence with fibers recovered from suspect's home, car or clothing can help in associating between the suspect and the crime scene, but conclusive opinions can't be formed to determine the origin of fibers. Similarly, in forensic science, the identification usually means the identification of items of physical evidence received in the laboratory, which demonstrate the possession of controlled substances to establish the element of crime. Some of the physical evidences require the conduct scientific test to identify them. The sample of blood, semen, accelerants and drugs required to be tested on the spot. Items are identified by comparing certain combinations of class characteristics only with those of known standards or previously established criteria. Class characteristics are the common properties to all the members of a group or certain class of objects or substances produced in a single batch. Now, individualization. The forensic science has a responsibility to demonstrate that a particular sample belongs to whom. According to law of individuality, everything in the universe is unique, even maybe among members of the same class or any particular item manufactured in the same machine one after the another in a batch. It may also refer to demonstrate that the questioned piece of physical evidence and a similar known sample have a common origin or not. Thus, in addition to class characteristics, objects and materials also possess certain individual characteristics which make them unique and can be used to distinguish even along the member of the same class or group. The nature of these individual characteristics varies from one type of evidence to another, but forensic scientists have to take advantage of them in an effort to individualize a piece of physical evidence by comparison process. Only a few types of physical evidences like hair, fingerprints, blood, broken small or bigger glass pieces, tool marks or marking present on bullets or other objects. Primarily physical patterns evidence. Directly physical comparison or physical matches can be achieved and can be called truly individualized. But with some other types of evidences, only partial individualization are possible, and in some cases they are nothing more than refined identifications. The term identification is sometimes used to mean personal identification. Fingerprints, for example, can be used to identify an individual. The terminology is little confusing, but this process is really an linking to the individual. Likewise, forensic odontologists can make personal individualizations in situations such as in mass disasters or in case of victims of arsons or explosions, where dead bodies cannot be readily identified, otherwise take the help of dental evidence and dental records. Now, the reconstruction. Reconstruction is basically a final step of any criminal investigation. It refers to the process of putting together the pieces of a case or situations with the objective to reach an understanding of a sequence of past events. It can be achieved on the basis of physical evidences that has resulted from the events. Reconstructions are regularly desired in criminal cases in which eyewitness evidence is absent or unreliable. These are important in many other types of cases too, such as automobile accidents. Identification and individualization of physical evidence can play an important role in providing data for reconstruction in most of the cases. By virtue of its nature, the forensic science has to do with legal matters and has close interactions with the criminal justice system. This feature and individualization sets it apart from traditional or basic sciences. Most of the forensic scientists are concerned almost exclusively with criminal cases, and they deal almost entirely with the criminal justice system. There are many kinds of civil cases too. However, in which physical evidence and forensic science have important role to play. Now, information to the physical evidence can reveal. Physical evidence may either be left behind by the perpetrator or sometimes picked up from the crime scene or victim. The evidences after their collections need to be analyzed, which is concerned with the identification of traces of evidences, individualizations, and reconstruction of events. In every forensic science investigation, the aim of the evidence analysis is to provide useful information that can help to make the facts of the case clearly to the jury. Physical evidence analysis in general and their interpretation in particular can provide a number of the following different types of information related to the crime. The first is information regarding to the corpus delicti. The corpus delicti means the body of the crime, refers to provide necessary information on the facts of the case to verify that a crime has taken place. It has often been interpreted that additional evidences are required beyond a confession to convict an individual for a crime. In other words, corroborating evidence must be introduced before a confession may be admitted for trial. The example may be the presence of tool or marks, blood stains, fingerprints, broken doors or windows, gangstered rooms and furnitures, and missing valuables are all examples of corroborating physical evidences that would help in establishing a case of burglary. Similarly, in an assault case, the blood, weapon or torn cloth could be important physical evidence to provide in the court of law. Now, the information regarding the modus operandi. Modus operandi is a Latin term which means method of operation, and it refers to the manner in which a crime has been committed, which was told by Gross in year 1924. A criminal modus operandi is based on the choices and his behaviors that are intended to assist the criminals in the commission of a crime. Most of the criminals gangs have a particular modus operandi which is characteristic style of using different weapons to commit a crime. Physical evidence can help in revealing these modus operandis. In arson case, the type and other containers used to carry accelerants and the way in which fires are set constitute modus operandi. The physical evidence that helps to establish these patterns is called the modus operandi or signature of an arsonist. Similarly, in case related to dactyry or burglary or terrorist strike has a specific modus operandi or signature of the criminal. Different cases treated separately can sometimes be connected by careful documentation of similar modus operandi. Hence, modus operandi or signature of the criminal must be given sufficient weightage. Now, linking a suspect with a victim and weapon. Linking a suspect with a victim and a weapon of offense is one of the most common and important, particularly in violent cases. This can be established by collecting and comparing the physical evidences from the crime scene. Blood stain, hair, blood present on the glass piece, clothing, fibers, cosmetics and other such evidences may be transferred from a victim to a perpetrator. Items found in a suspect's possession can be linked to a victim, such as by comparison of cartridge cases or bullets or by analysis of blood found on a knife. It is also possible to trace the evidence may be transferred from a perpetrator to a victim. It becomes important that suspects and their clothing along with other belongings are thoroughly searched for trace evidences. The other belongings of victims should also be treated in similar way. Now, placing a perpetrator at a crime scene. Another linkage, which is also a common and significant one, is to establish by the analysis of physical evidences the presence of perpetrator at the crime scene. Fingerprint and shoe prints, blood, body fluids like saliva and semen, hair, fibers, soil, bullet cartridges, cases, tool marks, footprints, shoe prints, tire marks and objects that belong to the criminal are some examples of deposited evidences. Depending on the type of crime, various kinds of evidences from the scene may be carried away. Stolen property is the most obvious example, but two-way transfers according to the Locard's principle of exchange of trace evidence can be used to link a suspect, a victim, or even a witness to a crime scene. Now, supporting or disproving a witness testimony. Physical evidence are very powerful and reliable source of information related to crime activity at the crime scene. Analysis of different type of evidences can often indicate conclusively whether a person version related to the set of events are believable or not. The best example of a driver whose vehicle matched with the description of a hit and run vehicle, an examination of the vehicle might reveal the presence of a blood on the bottom of the bumper. Now the driver explains the findings by claiming that his vehicle has hit a dog on the way. Tests on the blood for species identification can reveal whether the blood belongs to a dog or from a human. Now, the identification of a suspect with DNA or other individualizing techniques. The suspect can best be identified with the help of fingerprint evidence. A fingerprint found at a scene and later identified as belonging to a particular person results in an unequivocal identification of that person. The term identification as used here really means individualization. Although people commonly say identification of a suspect or identification of a fingerprint, this is not strictly correct. The distinction between the terms identification is based on class characteristics, which means identification of a particular group of items, and individualization is based on individual characteristics, which means identification of a particular item in a group. Now, providing an investigative lead. Physical evidence analysis can play an important role in directing and investigating along a productive path. In a hit and run case, for example, a chip of paint from the vehicle can be used to narrow down the number and kind of different cars that may have been involved. A substantial part of the forensic analysis consists of making comparisons between questioned and known samples. Depending upon the degree of individuality exhibited by the samples, the following conclusions can be drawn about the association between the people and physical evidences in different cases. When questioned and known samples are compared, the following three possible conclusions can be drawn. First, they match in all the properties used to compare them. In this case, a common origin becomes a possible, or with a few kind of evidence where jigsaw physical fits or fingerprints can be proven. Next, they do not match. In this case, the possibility of common origin is excluded. Exclusions are unequivocal and provide unimpeachable evidence of non-association. Exclusionary findings can almost help in the conduct of investigators. Now, in the third case, in some cases there is insufficient samples to make a conclusive comparison. In such an instance, class characteristics of the sample would be noted, but a conclusion could not be reached about the possibility of a common origin. Comparisons which demonstrate exclusion on the basis of physical analysis indicate that a prime suspect is innocent, that the investigation is not proceeding along with the productive path or initial theories about crime. What actually happened are wrong. In other cases where comparison yields a match, the conclusions depends on the type of evidences involved. Fingerprints are uniquely individualizing if sufficiently detailed. Bullets and cartridge cases can mostly be unequivocally to a particular weapon provided if weapon is available for comparison. Physical matches can provide proof of common origin with many types of evidences. Tracks and imprints can often be attributed to the object that made them. Therefore, forensic science can be used as an effective and powerful tool in the investigation of crime and prosecution of criminal if physical evidences are properly appreciated and utilized. Now, the summary. As each crime scene is unique and in each case presents its own challenges. Complex cases may require the collection, examination of a large number of varied evidences. Now next, the exact position of the evidences collected from the crime scene has been recorded. The evidences can be helpful in linking the crime with the criminal on the basis of results produced by the laboratory. Linking a suspect with a victim and a weapon of offense is one of the most common and important, particularly in violent crimes. A substantial part of the forensic analysis consisting of making comparisons between questioned and known samples.